Welcome into the show, everybody. Christian Ojackson here with Elliot Clough, who covers Iowa for Hawkeye Insider and 24/7 Sports. Elliot, thank you for being here with me.
For sure, Christian. I'm glad you said your last name and we got mine covered because I would not have gotten that. So quite the team we got here. Nobody's going to be able to pronounce our last names.
So, Elliot, when I had you on last year, Iowa basketball was in a very different spot. Fran had obviously taken the program to some really successful places. It didn't translate to March, but it was still a really exciting team with some fantastic players, a National Player of the Year in Luka Garza. But it was time for a new era, and you got one of the best coaches in the country. I'm not afraid to say that after what Ben McCollum was able to do, jumping up from D2 to D1, and just that Drake team was just unreal last year. Second slowest or slowest team in the country, just fantastic defensively. Start the season 12-0. You win a game in March Madness, and he brought the boys with him, headlined by Bennett Stirts. So tell me about the hire of Ben McCollum. Were you surprised? Was it kind of a layup? I think it was rumored a little bit before the season over that this was going to happen, but just the overall sentiment towards this hire.
Yeah, it's been really well received by Iowa, by the fans especially. You know, one thing that I think has kind of gone underrated with this hire, along with the fact that you mentioned he is a basketball savant, basketball genius. And like the people that I've heard say that are, you know, I'm not taking those opinions lightly. Mm-hmm. We'll say that. And additionally, he's an Iowa guy, like grew up in Iowa, went to school in Northwest Iowa, about 45 minutes from where I grew up, actually. And was born in Iowa City, played his college ball down at Southwest Missouri State. But like he has connected with the fan base already in ways that Fran McCaffrey struggled to, being an East Coast guy. McCollum is an Iowa guy who will stop at the grocery store and say hi and talk to you and your family. And that's really like, that's one thing. You might have your misgivings about Kirk Ferentz in the Iowa football program, but that's one thing that Kirk got right away. And that's what Ben McCollum has gotten right. And from what we've heard behind the scenes, that staff is made up of people like that too. I mean, Josh Sash, Tyler Sash's brother, who played at Iowa in the late 2000s, is on staff. So there's another Iowa connection right there. He's also brought previous connections like Luke Barnwell from Texas Tech as an assistant, who was on one of the better staffs in the country this last year. And then you get one of the best point guards in the country in Bennett Stirts, and you get another awesome mid-major transfer in Alvaro Fulgaras, but you get a high major transfer too in Brennan Housen, and like the ball got rolled, and you retain Cooper Koch, who was a legacy, an Iowa legacy. So Ben has really made a lot of good impressions in the right specific ways that are tailored to the Iowa basketball program and the Iowa fan base that are really important. And those are, you know, those might just be superficial things, one could say, but they're important, especially at Iowa. He's going to have a lot more money than Fran did last year. That's going to be really important. But yeah, I mean, in just about every way so far this offseason, he's hit it out of the park.
It's so cool to see him bring the guys from Drake, and you know, I'm not everyone. I think Isaiah Howard might have been a commit, but guys from the D2 ranks, like they're just rising together, and it's pretty awesome to see. Stirts, it all starts with him. This is a guy who some people might think be a lottery pick. Like he might be one of the best point guards in the country, 19, 4, and 6. And those are numbers playing on a team at a slow tempo. And obviously that tempo is going to be slow again, but it just shows how good of a player he is. That to put up 19 points and 6 assists with the amount of possessions they had in the game is just crazy. So just tell me about Bennett Stirts, if there's even a leap in store for him, or just kind of how he's become, you know, transitioned into being the leader of this team as well.
There could be a leap in store for him. I mean, they're not going to play at a crazy slow pace like they did last year. That's not McCollum's, you know, MO every single year in and year out. He said they didn't really have the shooting that they wanted. Mitch Muscari was kind of their go-to shooter. And now they have Brennan Housen, who is just kind of another level up from a Muscari type. But they also have shooters that are going to be like Fulgaras, who will be a big, but he'll be a guy on the perimeter. Tavian Banks has taken his jump shot to a new level. You're hoping Cooper Koch can you know, stay on the floor and stay healthy this year and add some shooting there as well. Plus Trey Thompson, who they got to reclassify, was 2026, and then he reclassified to 2025. He's a 4-star power forward, sort of that tweener power forward guy that can handle the ball and shoot the rock that Ben McCollum loves those dudes. If he could have 15 of those guys, he would take them, I'm sure. But in terms of Bennett, just a guy that you could not speed up. You know what I mean? Like he just plays at his own pace, and he's a killer. I was telling you how I went to UNI for college, and I went back and watched UNI versus Drake in the spring this year on campus at UNI. Packed house, and Bennett hit a 3 that shut the crowd up. The dude is the nicest guy you'll ever meet, but a stone cold killer. And then you bring in guys like Cam Maniau and Tavian Banks to be sort of the junkyard dog types to get boards, to play really good defense around a guy like Bennett. And I mean, and on top of the other additions that they made, but like Bennett is going to be beloved by this fan base. I can tell you that right now, because of the way he plays, but because of who he is as a person too. He's already connected with this fan base in a lot of ways in interviews and going out and being part of things and stuff like that. But he definitely will be the cornerstone. And you mentioned the leadership too. He was going to go through the NBA draft process and opted to say, no, I'm going to go straight to Iowa City.
Wow.
And I got to break that news. But and Bennett was he gave me that. So he was really good about that. But I think that's really an indication as to who he is and what he wants to be for Ben McCollum and for the Hawkeyes this year, and be that leader on the court, and also, be one of the best players in the Big Ten potentially. Might not be the best point guard just because of who they've got at Purdue, but he's going to be up there.
Next, I would talk about Alvaro Fulgaras. Am I saying his name right?
Yeah, you got it.
So, plays for Robert Morris. Is really good. Took Alabama to the wire at the end of the in that 2-15 game in March Madness. It's rare to get a guy, he's a rising junior, 14-9, 3 assists, a steal and a block at shooting 42% from 3-on-3 attempts per game. Like that is like a very special profile. I know this guy was sought after in the portal. How has Ben able to get him, and what are your expectations for him this year?
Yeah, I think it was selling what he's done with other guys his size and what they look for at those bigger guys, and what they want him to do. They don't really look for their traditional big. They really look for guys who can play make and be a secondary scorer, like to a guy like to Bennett. So I think it was fit. I think it was the fact that, like I mentioned, they have a lot more money this go round in NIL than they did prior to. Because they had to compete with Villanova. They had to compete with, I think Providence was another program that was involved with him out of the portal. But what is my understanding is it was fit. It was the fact that Bennett's been there, done that, and that he's going to be able to come in and be a primary part of the offense, but not have to do everything. He's going to have a partner in crime, so to speak, in Bennett Stirts, and he's going to have guys that are going to be those rebounders, those defenders like Tavian Banks, like Cam Maniau, and I think it was the fact that he can step in, play right away, be a focal point of the offense, be a focal point of what they want to do, but not have to do everything. And the money was there. So that's just part of it now, right? That's just part of college basketball and the transfer portal. So a lot of it made sense for Alvaro.
That other key transfer, that other key non-Drake transfer, I know everyone's a transfer, but they're kind of in a separate bucket to me just because they all came together. But Brendan Housen starts at Nova, goes to Kansas State. Kansas State they spent a lot of money in NIL last year. It was kind of just a mess. They had one nice stretch, but Housen was basically their only shooter. Took 7 threes a game, made him at 39% clip, and that's in a tough Big 12 where that offense was kind of brutal at sometimes. And like, what I'm getting at is he's gonna be in more advantageous situations as the sniper that he is, to be able to not have to. I don't know that he's not gonna have to force as many shots, I guess. And what I'm getting at is I think this dude could shoot like 45% from 3 this year. Is that kind of the expectation that he is one of the best snipers, and kind of what was the process of getting him as well on this team?
Yeah, so before Housen entered the portal, there was some buzz around him potentially entering and wanting to play for Ben McCollum. So that's where that really started. Of course, he entered the portal. He wanted to test the waters, but ultimately returned back to that frame of thinking of, this is where I want to be. Previously friends with Bennett Stirts, and I'm sure there were some conversations between them when he was in the portal about the fit, about how things would work. Bennett's already said it to the media, and I think on some podcasts, it's like, I can already tell there's more space now with Brendan Housen on the floor. Now, I wasn't at the practice that this happened because he was out for a good chunk of the summer, just rehabbing from an injury, and they wanted to be as careful as they could. But when he did make it back for a practice, like I said, I wasn't there, but all the reports and the film that I saw from my teammates at Hawkeye Insider and Sean and Dave was that Brendan, if I remember right, people were saying Brendan like didn't miss a three in that whole practice. And if you're Bennett Stirts, you're just like a whole new world. Like it's Aladdin, like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, and he's providing a shooting that Iowa probably hasn't seen in a while, and a consistent shooting that Iowa hasn't seen in a while. And you mentioned maybe he could shoot 45% from three. Well, he's gonna have you don't play under Ben McCollum and not have chemistry, if you know what I mean. Like Kansas State, it's just like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole almost last year. It was just really clunky. That's just not going to happen under Ben McCollum. They're going to figure it out. They're going to figure out ways to find that chemistry, to be where you need to be when you need to be there, and to create for others. And having a point guard like Bennett Stirts to be a creator, to be your primary ball handler, is going to put him in a lot of advantageous situations. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd put it down as he's going to shoot 45%, but like, you know, he could. Like he said, he could.
That's the way to phrase it. So when you talk about the chemistry thing under McCollum, like it really popped last year. Like when Drake in I think it was the Charleston Classic, they played Miami, and I thought that Miami team was going to be pretty good. It was a total whiff on my part, but like they had some good players, and Drake just looked like at another level of basketball. Like they were just so much better and so much more on the same page on both ends. But then they beat somebody else, and they beat Vandy. It was a good Vandy team in the championship of that tournament, and they beat, of course, Kansas State. So I don't know if there's a little handshake line talk between Housen and McCollum there, but yeah, I have so much faith in his ability to get the guys to defend at a higher level, like as a unit, and then offensively just to have these guys ready to play and understanding roles and understanding where to be and just playing really hard. So with that being said, I kind of hit on the three top guys. So of the crop of the remaining guys that came from Drake and Kim, Isaiah Howard, Tavion Banks, Kale Combs, and then Cooper Cock, who was able to keep from the McCaffrey era. I know all those guys are going to play. Who do you think are kind of the most important pieces, or what are some key things from the summer from that group of guys?
Tavion Banks is one that we've kind of just kept hearing about. I mentioned the junkyard dog sort of mentality. He was the sixth man of the year in the MVC and played a lot of really good defense, got rebounds. But now that you have a Fulgaras and you're bringing along Maniau with you, and Trevin Urick might play, freshman, 6'11 freshman, probably spot minutes, not a lot, just because he's bigger, and he was going to end up at UNI, and then this signing happened with McCollum and deciding to go to Iowa, opened up his recruitment and all this other stuff. So he's a guy that probably should have been on a high major roster before, but he shut his recruitment down a little quickly. Ended up at UNI. Anyway, I would say Tavion Banks is probably the number one name that sticks out to me the most, because every day at practice last year at Drake, he's the one who wanted to guard Bennett Stirts. Every practice. Always guarded the opposing team's best player. And now, from what we're hearing, he's starting to improve his outside shot and his handle, improving in leadership. This is a guy that I think could start. The starting lineup is really going to be interesting to follow. I think the locks are Stirts, Housen, and Fulgaras. Other than that, it's maybe Maniau, maybe Banks. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to follow. But Tavion is I wouldn't call him the straw that stirs the drink. I think that's Bennett Stirts. But he might be the engine that makes this team go, if you will. He's the one that sets the tone. He's the one that's going to be diving after loose balls. But don't count out Isaiah Howard in that regard either. Banks is a little bit thicker, a little bit stronger, a guy that you can probably trust more to play more consistent defense, to get the rebounds more consistently, because he's a little bit older, a little bit more physically developed. But Isaiah Howard's going to be a fan favorite too. That guy, for a guy who I think his senior season was shooting or scoring like 35 points a game in small town Missouri, is so willing to not be the guy on this team. There's a reason he played as a freshman last year. Super athletic, will do all the dirty work for you. Gonna play really hard defense. He'll make some mistakes because he's young, but he's going to be a guy that the Iowa fan base really loves. And then you look at Cam Maniau, and I think he's going to fill sort of a similar role that he did last year. He might be your starting undersized center at 6'8", 6'9", but he's tough as nails, going to fight for everything that he gets. And having Alvaro will help, and having Trevin will help in terms of spot minutes. But Cam Maniau is going to be really important. I think there are two things that Iowa wanted that they didn't get out of this portal window. And that's a true big who's probably 6'10", 6'11", with some experience. Those guys are just really expensive.
Yeah. And
they also didn't get a secondary ball handler, a backup guard that you can have be a ball handler that's not Bennett Stirts. They had a commit, Ashton Williamson from FIU, and then that fell through for whatever reason. But now that's going to have to be Cale Combs. That's another guy that we've heard a little bit about through the summer, reaching a new level. And what we saw from him in summer practice is his ability to play opposite in like scrimmages, going up and down the court opposite of Bennett Stirts, command the offense confidently. Like a lot more confidently than he did at Drake. Have a smooth stroke from three, soft touch around the rim, body control that I hadn't seen before. Was actually recruited to play wide receiver in college football. Was recruited to Western Michigan by Iowa's current offensive coordinator, Tim Lester, when he was the head coach at Western Michigan. So kind of small world. But his body control is something that I think he's finally starting to really be able to take advantage of other guys with that in and around the basket on a more consistent basis. And if he can hit that floater, if he can really manipulate the pick and roll and play confidently, command the offense like he did this summer, like it's amazing because, when you look at coaching and development and going and getting guys in the portal and stuff, like it's not a video game, right? Like you can't just make it happen with experience points or whatever. But seemingly Ben McCollum didn't go get that secondary ball handler like he wanted in the portal and just used those experience points on Cale Combs, right? Like that's the kind of the way it feels right now. We have to see it. Because he didn't really play a ton last year. Wasn't a huge impact guy, but he's a good defender too. He's long. Like I said, he's athletic. So every single, maybe not Joey Mattione, but like every single one of those Drake guys is going to be important this year. Mattione is going to be more of a reserve guy, probably end of the bench, but all of them are important. I'm really interested to see Cooper Koch might be the most interesting of all those guys though, because he is prototypical Ben McCollum's guys, 6'7", 6'8", that can shoot. Needs to learn how to defend a little bit because he didn't really get taught that with the last. But he's figuring some things out. He's really bought in. Said he's in the best shape of his life. So that'll be really interesting to see where he falls in that 6, 7, 8, 9 spots in the rotation.
He shot 43% from deep last year. 39 from Allison, 40 from Stirts, 42 from Alvaro. Like, if you can get guys like Banks and Combs too, and Howard can shoot it a bit too. I know he's 31%, but it seems like he could have more shooting this year. The two things that stood out to me that I was about to ask you about, you mentioned right there. One of them was Bennett Stirts was number 1 in the country in percentage of minutes played. So I was going to ask who that backup was, and you told me it was Combs. And the other was, I always botch his name. How do I say Cam's last name?
Maniau.
Maniau, when I watched Drake last year, like he only played 19 a game, but like I thought he definitely was like a good player, super mobile as a big and a guy with, a strong guy. And then Fulgaras, like 2.4 stocks per game combined. But my concern is the Big Ten just has so many good bigs that it's like, how does, like, this is still a dude who went to Robert Morris and a dude who started at D2. So it's like, what is the concern level of just being able to guard night in and night out in the Big Ten? And I assume that's why the tempo, you mentioned the tempo could speed up a bit, but I have a feeling that the best way that, McCollum can win is to keep these games kind of low scoring.
Well, one thing, Maniau is actually from Wyoming. He came from Wyoming to Drake, right. And then he and Cale Combs both started at Wyoming.
Thank you for that. I forgot.
No, you're good. I think they followed, if I remember right, Bryson Williams, who joined the staff at Drake after there was some turnover there in Wyoming. But I really, Maniau's a good rebounder, and he's strong and he's sturdy. They're really lucky that they don't play a Zach Edey Purdue team this year, right? It's going to be interesting. I do think they're going to play faster, but you absolutely have a point, because at one point or another, you're gonna have to do something a little different than everybody else because of that lack of size. Either that or Trevin Urick's going to have to grow up real fast, right? And I mean, do you have the opportunity to small ball everybody to death? Like, are you going to be able to be fast enough to do that, or are you going to have to play slow enough to do that? So I mean, that's a great question. I'd love to tell you what the answer is going to be, but it's a really fair question. I have my concerns about Fulgaras as a perimeter, not a perimeter, as a paint defender, as a rim defender. I have my concerns about Maniau in that respect, even though he is a little bit stronger, a little bit thicker. And I think Trevin Urick is probably still going to be a step slow this year because of the age, because of the fact that he is just a freshman. And I think he's going to surprise some people, though. His playmaking is really unique. But you do have a point. I would say that would not surprise me if that ends up being something that McCollum and his staff decide to do, because McCollum the last thing he does is sit on his hands and say, we're going to do what we've always done. That's just not who he is. They're going to adjust. They're going to figure something out.
I like that. And how funny would it be if, Iowa fans are expecting like the most opposite style of basketball with McCollum coming in. Imagine there are a few games of the Big Ten, let's just run. Let's just get a ton of threes up like we can shoot. But one thing's for sure, whether this is, when you have Bennett Stirts and you have McCollum, it's kind of like when I think of the NFL, like it's like if you have Stafford or McVay, like you'll kind of figure everything out. So I just have a level of confidence. The Big Ten is loaded, but there's a high floor with the continuity in the sense of these Drake guys, how confident we are in the fits of guys like Hausen, Koch, and Fulgaras, that I have a sense of confidence. But before I get you out of here, any prediction for what you're expecting this year? Is Iowa getting back to the tournament, and could they push the top 20?
Man, I don't know about top 20. I hope they go back to the tournament. Just as somebody who covers the team, and I have yet to cover an NCAA tournament in the three years I think that I've been on the beat. I think they went my first year, but I wasn't quite covering the team yet. So yeah, I hope so. I think there is a legitimate chance, like you said, with Ben McCollum and Bennett Stirts, anything is possible. If they push the top 25, man, I'm so in football mode. Carver will be rocking, and the women expect to fully sell out. The men will be fun. I wish that they would start scheduling UNI and Drake again, because that would make the non-con a lot more fun. They do have some really fun games in the non-con, though. They still play Iowa State. They're playing Xavier at home. They're potentially playing, I think, between Ole Miss and the Antelopes.
Grand Canyon. And then there's another team in in one of those tournaments in the non-con. So they've got some pretty interesting matchups at that point in the year. Iowa State's going to be nuts, and Ames. That'll be their first, I think, real. Like, are you legit? Are you legit? That'll be their first real test. But the conference schedule just came out. There's a stretch in there where it's going to get brutal. But like, if you win, Carver will fill up. It is. They are primed and ready for something new. And if Ben McCollum comes in and wins,
like Carver might be one of the better arenas, toughest arenas to play in the Big Ten if things get rolling, because it gets loud in there, man. Like I don't know if you ever made it out for a Caitlin Clark game, dude. I went there for when she, and this is like peak, but when she broke the all-time Pete Maravich's record when they played Ohio State, that was like a religious experience. It was insane in there. And I'm not saying like Ben McCollum is the next Caitlin Clark, right? Like, or bring in the next Caitlin Clark or whatever. But Carver is due for some renovations, but it can. Iowa fans are very passionate, and if you win and if you treat people like they want, like they expect from somebody who who coaches an Iowa team, they'll embrace you and they'll love you. And Ben has a real opportunity to get that, to earn that.
There you have it, Elliot. Thanks so much for joining. It's a new era for Hawkeye basketball. I'm excited to see what it brings.